So for this exercise, we want to find our feet about shoulder width apart. Even just a little bit more than that would be okay. And what we're going to be doing is we're going to be sinking our weight down and bending our legs. Now what we don't want to do here is we don't want to think about just trying to compress and drop ourselves down almost like we're crunching ourselves. And we don't want to think about this like a squat where I'm super arched in my back and I'm trying to sit back, because this engages the muscles too much. So what we want to think about is I'm going to let my pelvis fall naturally backwards in space, and I'm going to think about sinking my weight from where it is stored in my hips right now because I'm compressing my low back. I'm going to open up my low back, and then I'm just going to let my weight sink all the way down into my feet. You're going to join us, Bubs. I guess the cat's joining us. So once I sink that weight all the way down into my feet, the next thing that I'm going to think about is really trying to open up right from this inner line here. Now this inguinal line, when I end up standing like this and I start to stretch almost my two femurs away from each other by opening up this inguinal line, I should feel a sensation where the weight or the support of that weight goes into my belly. If I find that when I start to bend down, I'm feeling it in my back, I need to open up my lower back by letting my pelvis drop down in space more. So from here, what we're going to do, we're going to take a breath in. We're going to exhale, keeping ourselves where we are. We're just going to feel that weight sink down to our feet to start. Really trying to bring your mind's awareness to the bottoms of your feet and feel as though there's more pressure on the bottom of your feet. Really let your legs accept the weight of your body. Normally we just hold it in our back. So once we let that weight settle down into our feet, I want you to just kind of move around a little bit, just rotating back and forth. And I want you to see if it feels like your rib cage is connected to what's happening in your hips or disconnected from what's happening in your hips. If we find that it's really easy to move our rib cage in that slow fashion, I know what I need to do is I need to let my pelvis come underneath myself just a little bit more. We're not thinking about tucking, we're thinking about sinking. So this is tucking, where I'm actively engaging this underneath. Sinking is the act of just letting my pelvis fall down in space. We want to think about sinking. So once I let that pelvis sink, I'm going to feel the weight in the feet. And then from there, all I'm going to do is just take this little bit of movement to the right, a little bit of movement to the left. I should feel this stretch through my whole body. If I find that I'm not feeling that stretch through my whole body, can I sink my weight more? Can I bring that weight down into my feet more and let my low back open up? Let my belly go. Once I get to this position where I can start to feel that really kind of kick in, then the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to slowly start to sink my weight down by bending my knees, trying to keep everything loose and light. Really feeling this as a stretch through the legs instead of a contraction and grip through the legs. If we feel our legs, they should be mildly contracted. We shouldn't feel as though they're overly contracted, overly tight, overly gripping. This should be a really easy sensation through the body. And the way that it's normally described is like steel wrapping, cotton wrapping steel. So the idea is that you have this steel bar, right? And that's your bones and your fascia are like this steel bar. And then there's this soft, pillowy cotton that wraps around it, and that's our muscles. So we want to think about our muscles as that soft, kind of pillowy cotton as I come down into this. Really trying to stretch through my body. Really trying to think about not letting my knees come in and not actively trying to push my knees out, but almost imagining that my femurs can corkscrew down into space. Then, once I get to here, I'm going to just try to relax that tissue a little bit more, bring the weight a little bit more onto the balls of the feet instead of back on the heels. I'm going to let go of my low back more. I'm going to open up through that space in my spine, feeling that stretch through my legs, feeling my legs actively rotating into that ground space. Then from here, all I'm going to do, I'm going to bring my arms up I'm going to let my wrists come a little bit heavy and let my elbows drop down. And I'm just going to rotate. So I'm going to keep this position with my legs. I'm going to slowly rotate my upper body. And as I do this, I should feel as though my rotation of my upper body is actually stretching through my legs. If I find that I close off through my legs, I'm just rotating like this, right? I'm not stretching anything. The difference is when I start to actually sink and I start to rotate open, then as I start to move through this, I start to feel a stretch through my legs as I rotate. And then coming back the opposite way. Finding this rotation, finding the opening through the legs, finding the opening through the hips. What will typically happen is if we have a compensation, as I rotate one way, my hip's gonna come with me. So I have to think about trying to open up through that space to allow that to continue to stretch. And this is very, very, very light kind of sensations. We're not thinking about trying to force anything. It's really just about feeling those sensations. So we're going to take that rotation. We can drop down a little bit lower, or once we start to get a little bit more advanced, we're going to move our legs further apart. Now again, as I move my legs further apart, I really have to focus on that sensation of stretch instead of compress. Yeah? So I'm feeling that stretch coming all the way through my legs, opening up through my femurs, opening up through my back, allowing me to stretch down. Once I find myself in this position and I really relax through, yeah, it's not as though I'm just slumped here because now everything's compressed, right? I'm stretched through all of my tissue. Then I'm going to take that same rotation. So I'm going to bring my hands up into this nice kind of loose position. You can almost think about it like you're holding 2 cups, one in each hand. And then the key is let your elbows sink down. So typically we hold our elbows in space, and this causes more tension in the rest of our body. We want to let our elbows sink down, and then from there, I'm going to just let my hands go a little bit loose. I'm going to stretch through every part of my body, opening up through, then I'm going to slowly rotate as I breathe. Exhale, come back. Inhale, go to the other side. Only going as far as you can maintain that stretch. The moment that I go past this, I start to lose that stretch. If I try to force this, it's just going to pull me backwards. But if I stretch and open up through, I find that this is where my end range is. So we're really trying to work in connecting the whole body together. That way, as we start to progress this and move into larger format movements, we're actually starting to get that control of being able to just move through that entire space without finding that we catch anywhere along that.